Buonasera a tutti, mi chiamo Ricci e benvenuto al podcast F1. Today is season 4, episode 15, and we're recording this a couple of days after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. I'm here with Andrew and Erica. Ciao, buonasera, come stai? How are you guys doing?
Ciao, buonasera a tutti.
Andrew?
Mamma mia.
How do you say friends? I want to say my friends are very handsome, and I know that's guapo, like guapo. But
Mia amici, I would say. I don't know.
mi
I have to.
amici? Mi
We're gonna get
amici?
roasted. Don't worry. My dad's gonna roast us after this episode. I'm gonna get like a whole long thing about the pronunciation.
That's
I
why I
think
I
didn't
speak
about
put
French
that's
and
why I didn't put
Spanish.
myself out there, kids. If you know better, don't do it.
I know how to say the train is arriving in 2 minutes, and that's about it. And that's what I learned from being stuck on a platform in Rome when I
I
was
was
there
gonna
for
say,
So
good old backpacking adventures.
it wasn't even backpacking, it was like me and my mom. Even better.
they
I
got on the
love it.
train in Paris and they showed up. They accidentally woke up in Rome.
It was intentional, but we didn't realize how far out of like the core our hotel was in Rome, so it was a lot of really just praying that one of the very nice military men at each subway stop would help us get where we needed to go. So,
Police, yeah. We're filming this a couple of days after this weekend's race, and it's excited. First weekend, first race in Europe. 13 away of hitting 1,000 followers on Instagram. I'm seeing Andrew and Erica this weekend, so it'd be great if we can get 13 more people to celebrate 1,000. Maybe we'll pop a bottle. We'll see. Also, Andrew and Erica, thank you for the lovely birthday wishes this past weekend. I'm actually really excited. I get some merch I get to rock from the I Give an F1 podcast ladies down in the United States. So tune into that post when that comes. But let's get into this weekend. We have the fastest lap by George Russell set at 1 minute and 18 seconds, 0.589. And I guess I was wondering who do we agree to do this week's episode?
oh, bonne question. A good question.
All right, I'll try it.
You want to try it? Okay, I can time you. Give me 1 second. I'll bring up my phone here. I'll do next week. I feel like I
Sure.
haven't done one in a while, and who doesn't love to hear me trip over my words? So I have 1 minute, and do you want to round up to 119?
See, andiamo.
3, 3, 2, 2.
Ciao
Uno.
from Italia as we gather for the first European race here in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. This past weekend, let's start off with FP1, FP2, and FP3, where Ferrari looked pretty good in all practices, and Fernando Alonso hit the wall. Despite a difficult day in the car on Friday, Verstappen bounced back on Saturday's qualifying to claim his 8th consecutive pole position, putting him just ahead of the McLaren's pair of Piastri and Norris. However, a 3-place grid drop handed Piastri after the session, and the Australian was forced due to impediment, with Magnussen pushing him down to P5. Race felt it was just going through the motions, with a one-stop strategy being the preferred strategy for a number of teams. However, Williams decided to make it interesting by not properly putting on a tire felt for Alex Albon's car, forcing him a lap down early in the afternoon, led to a 10-second penalty. Just a great day for Williams in Imola. However, it turned out to be the ultimate car and mouse game between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Max took the advantage early off the line once the lights went out and was able to build up a steady gap. Came a little bit of a battle between strategies between Ferrari, McLaren, and Verstappen, and Lando made it pretty close at the end. However, coming P2, Max Verstappen held on, and let's get right into it. But also, Lance Stroll in the points.
I love how you're like, let's stroll in the points. Screw the timer. We're just going right through anyway.
Ferrari home race. The Tifosi was out. A lot of talk in the media about some of the upgrades that they were doing this weekend. I mean, Carlos Sainz did make a comment. I think the media talked a little too much about the upgrades, but I guess overall, what were your first thoughts of like this weekend?
I'm enjoying that we're seeing a little bit more of a mix at the front of the grid between the teams. I feel like this is giving us a little bit more of what we were hoping for with the change in regs a couple years ago. Like we were always laughing for a long time, the Hamver bot, all that stuff. But now we're seeing the McLarens come in. We're seeing those Ferraris putting a little bit more pressure on them too. It's not necessarily leading to, I would say, the results people are hoping to see, but man, that gap is closing and it's going to result in a lot of fun. And it will come down to strategy for a lot of these teams, which I think is what we're hoping for, right? Like that's what makes it fun. It's all about your pit strategy, it's about your tire management. And we saw that especially at the end with Lando holding on for dear life, going around some of those corners to close that gap as much as possible. So I'm excited for what's coming up next.
Andrew, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend, especially FP1 to FP3. Red Bull did not look strong at all. So Ferrari, McLaren was thinking maybe we have a really good shot of having a very competitive race this weekend. Overall, it's tough to overtake in Imola, right? The chicanes are pretty high speed. The track's narrow, right? So it was tough. So that's kind of made it a little bit of a snooze fest throughout the race. But what I found was really exciting was, yeah, as Erica mentioned, the mix up of the grid to start to really, and unfortunately Checo had a bad weekend, but that created opportunities for other people to have an opportunity to secure some good points. And like even seeing Yuki start high up on pole, well, not high up on pole, but high up near the pole during qualifying, but unfortunately had, an issue during the day where he dropped down to P10. If you told me last year at this time that McLaren was going to be the team in a year to put the gap to about zero point 0.7 seconds to Red Bull, I would have been laughing in your face. They
Oh,
have just done an
100%.
absolute 180, and we called out Zach Brown on this podcast as he was even the right guy to be CEO. Did he have too much on his plate? Clearly, whatever the personnel changes that he made have worked out. Because they are, I honestly think, the most competitive car on the grid, and will challenge. I'm not saying they will challenge Red Bull in a few races time, because I think Red Bull have gotten a little bit of a punch in the mouth, and they need to figure out are they going to be able now with Adrian Newey not there to build this car up with some additional upgrades to compete, and will they have the right strategy internally to fight?
We look at Lando Norris's gap that he was able to catch up with Verstappen, and I know Verstappen was having some issues. However, he can be vulnerable if Sergio Perez is not P2 blocking him. And this was a very good example. Sorry, not blocking him, but blocking anybody that was coming close to him. Verstappen, I think you guys knew what I meant. But this is the first time we really kind of, maybe this is the moment where, look, this could be it. Like whether if it's a Ferrari, whether if it's Lando, and Lando drove exceptionally from lap 48, having the gap at 7.5 seconds to Verstappen, to literally having at 0.7 on lap 6, basically the last lap. I think also Leclerc did have some promise throughout the race, but I know there was that little bit the battle between the four of the drivers in the strategy and minding the gap and everything. He was catching Norris, but then he had that one moment where he went off the grass, and the minute his tires were done in that series. So like, I think overall,
But isn't that become like Charles Leclerc's sort of MO now,
Oh, ever
unfortunately?
since 2022, that's kind of been his MO. Like,
And it's tough to watch because he's a very good driver, but he
so
makes these critical mistakes in key moments of the race that cost him points.
so I
but
play on a volleyball team, and you have to go to 25 points, and there would be games where we would be leading by a significant margin in a set, only to have to come back. So we named ourselves the Chokers for an entire season, which then meant that we were so determined to prove ourselves wrong, we came back on the other side and did well for a brief glimmering moment of potential positivity. But now it's happening again. So you know what? I think Charles just needs to own that this is his MO a little bit. And maybe that will give him the swagger and the confidence to do something about it and overcome it. Because, like, several times he's ended up in the gravel or a wall or in the grass or something because it seems like he's not quite as calm under pressure as some of the other guys are in those moments.
I would argue he's kind of in the case where Lando Norris was like before Miami, where he's got 16 something podiums and he just needed to get that win. And so in this case for Leclerc is, look, he hasn't won since 2022.
Austria, I believe that
Yeah,
was.
thank you. It was Austria. Thank you. He just needs to kind of, he is finding his groove per se. Like he is now P2 because in the championship for drivers, getting a podium for the first time in Imola since what is it, 2006. His P3 was his fourth podium of the season and second in a row. So, I think just trying to get that confidence into, I hate to say it, Monaco. We all know what happens in Monaco with Leclerc. So just try to get something for him going to, and like, I guess maybe I'm just being biased here, but like clearly the Tifosi didn't really care. They looked like they were about to party for a P3 like they've never before. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw
I believe that was their first podium at Imola since Schumacher in like
yeah,
03
2006.
or 6. Sorry, yeah.
2006, dang.
So, and the frustrating part about Leclerc is that he can win. He's proven that he can win. And part of me would love to see him kind of get that 2019 mentality back when, he defended in Monza. He defended the likes of Lewis Hamilton and that rocket of a Mercedes right to the bitter end to win at Monza there. And I still think that's inside him. It's just a matter of, when stuff like that happens to you, right, you create blockers, right, in your mind. And the blockers continue to add up till you see like kind of a tunnel vision space. He just needs to kind of let that release and understand that it's okay to make a mistake in the sense to go fight for a mistake, and not having to worry about that on the tires, right? And kind of grip up.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, especially with now Monaco is the next weekend, and a track that, margin for error is very, very high.
You know what they need to do to bring out the beast in Charles Leclerc? Someone needs to reenact Taken, but with Leo instead of an actual human being.
Not Leo.
Just you're telling me that if he realized that pupper was gone, he wouldn't go full Liam Neeson, John Wick on everyone's ass.
Oh, he'll win in Monaco by like 5 laps.
Exactly. And I think that's what we need. So, I'm not a fan of crime, but I do believe it.
Just watch what you say.
But I do believe it can serve a purpose. So,
So
that's my hope for this coming weekend, apparently.
well, I have a question for you, Erica, kind of
Sure.
basing off of, up and coming drivers and stuff like McLaren, like Oscar Piastri, it's quite an interesting thing to watch because he clearly is fast in that McLaren, right? But there's always like this one little thing lately that kind of costs him positions out of the gate, and it affects his rest of the weekend. And if that didn't happen, I almost wonder if he could win too. I think he can. It's just, what does he need to do to overcome that as well in order to fight like not only Max but Lando for top spots?
Oh, Richie seems so thrilled to answer this one. I am dying to hear what you have to say.
So number one, it's looking in his family tree to see if he's got any Monegasque? I don't know. Monegasque internal or external roots within the family to give him that edge next weekend. I think that helps. Like he tried that in Italy. Didn't really work out that much, but I think Leclerc wants to adopt him, and now his mom. There's going to be some Twitter war now. So I think, honestly, he's got to find some family tree to get some voodoo magic going into this weekend. Sorry, but on a serious note, go ahead, Erica, if you want to take that one.
I also think he just needs a very large cup of coffee. I don't know if it's just me, but I always feel like Piastri seems a little too chill sometimes in his post-race interviews. I'm like, I get you're tired, man, but you'd think some type of adrenaline was still firing there. But, I mean, truthfully, this is the guy's second season in an F1 car, and similar to some of these other guys, there's a bit of maturing that has to happen. For him, I think it's a little different. We saw with some of the guys, it's the ego and the hubris that can get in the way. I mean, Lando was a prime example of that in Sochi the other year. In Oscar's case, I think there's a little bit of maybe like a mental sports psychology game of not letting some of those small mistakes affect the rest of your weekend. But part of it is that maybe he's just not used to being in a scenario where those mistakes are happening, or it's not something he's had to worry about because he's been able to handle the cars he's been in previously a little bit better. I do think he has the ability to do well. We saw it last year with nowhere near as competitive a McLaren when he took the dub in that sprint race. There is the beast within. We're seeing great stuff in qualifying. It's just he maybe needs to pull a Leclerc in a way too, right? Like, do really well in qualifying, you got to convert on race day. We're just not there yet. So I'm hopeful that now that there's all this momentum and excitement and energy in the team, if he can hone that psychological piece a little bit better and really kind of build on what's already there, even by the end of this year, I would love to see him a little bit higher on the podium and even take a win if at all possible. I think the Papaya have the ability to do that this year. It's just a question of him.
So I guess a question, just like, so I think we've kind of already answered this, but the ladies from the I Give an F1 podcast wanted to ask and say this question to me, to us, is do we think that the McLaren car is the car to beat right now, and that should Red Bull be scared?
Well, I think based off merit, Red Bull is still the car to beat, right? Until McLaren can prove otherwise, that they can consistently beat Red Bull on points in a weekend, it's gonna be Red Bull until that happens. Because Max had his 7th pole out of 7 races this season, so he's 100% there. He's won 5 of 7 races, which I'm pretty sure is a 71.4% conversion rate already. And then with this win, he's now passed Lewis Hamilton in terms of win percentage, is now 30.7% versus Lewis Hamilton's 30.4%.
30.7%. Oh my gosh, that's a ridiculous statistic to be able to pull out about yourself.
Right. Now, mind you, he did also win this weekend on the back of the fact that he also won a iRacing Nürburgring 24-hour endurance challenge with this team, Redline Sim Team. So the fact that he won a 24-hour endurance challenge that night before and then decided to go and race in Imola and win that, let's just say it. Max Verstappen is him.
He's him. He is that guy. He is him. That's I didn't realize that was right before Imola was that 24-hour challenge. Like, I saw clips of it, but I thought it was at least on like Wednesday or something.
I thought they were joking on the broadcast, and I looked it up. I was like, no, it was like the night before.
He looked tired as F, like, in the post game.
Oh, I would be too.
Not post game, post race interviews. Sorry.
But the way I see it, I think Red Bull, it's going to be telling for them in the next couple of weeks. I would give it 2 to 3 weeks here, because obviously we've seen McLaren take a win. We're now seeing them put a lot of pressure on. But there's been a lot of other factors at play. There were, near collisions and issues with the car. Maybe you've got a driver who's running on a lack of sleep and maybe not performing optimally either. But you brought up a good point earlier about Checo. And so much of the time, even if he hasn't done super well in qualifying, the car has been speedy enough that he can very quickly breeze past a lot of the other guys on the grid and get into a point where he's pulling whole Minister of Defense, making room for Max to run away with the gap, and we're not seeing that this year. And so it kind of comes down to Checo, where he's got to be better in qualifying if Red Bull wants to continue that dominance, because right now I think they will, if it continues as we've seen these last 2 weeks, start to be a very different vibe over in the Red Bull garage, and a very different vibe when they're done practice and qualifying sessions, because everyone's going to be wondering what the heck is going on. We're not a 2-driver team, but we've kind of inadvertently been using a 2-driver strategy to maximize the points for one of them, and we've got other people now widening the gap between the two, and we need to find ways to get Checo either back up at the front of the grid or find someone who's going to do that if they can't make this car get back to that like 35-second lead dominance that it had before.
And it was interesting too this weekend, because during the race, I don't know if it was a matter of just preserving tires, because Red Bull couldn't get like their tire strategy set up. Maybe that was the case, but Checo got easily overtaken by like Lewis Hamilton, George Russell at one point. It wasn't, he didn't really put up a fight, and that's just not really who he is. He's the Minister of Defense, for crying out loud, right? He doesn't earn, he's earned that nickname. And he kind of just let it go this weekend, which was just uncharacteristic by Checo, in my opinion.
So Imola is notorious for having one of the longest pit stops on the grid. I think an average pit stop is at least 30 seconds, where in others it's not even 21, or even shorter, like vice versa. Like, yeah, you're telling me that even a moment that like where a lot of people have pitted, where it was a Lando Norris or Leclerc or something, like just kind of you think that he might want to try to play spoiler if he's in front of them, but like he got overpassed so easily. Mind you, I guess he was on tires that were like 19, 20 laps already used, but like at least like try to put in an effort to kind of, place block or play spoil off on their first strategies pit stop. Speaking about weekends, to forget, Fernando Alonso, what the hell?
You lose.
How you feeling, Clary? Tell us.
How do you,
Tell us how you feeling over there at the Green Mean Machine.
Do a barrel roll.
It's just
team.
really sad that like it's fun to talk to you two about how well your teams are doing, and then there's just my team that just decides to bring what they call upgrades, or let's just call them downgrades for what they are, because another weekend where they were to bring upgrades on the floor, and then oh man, FP3 was just an absolute nightmare for Alonso. Crashed at FP3, then leads to P20 on the grid to start because he really couldn't get the car fixed. Like as much as they tried and got the car serviceable, it wasn't good enough for qualifying. And then in a way though, it was interesting because he kind of led like a test race, basically testing strategies and tires at the back of the pack for them, which now kind of allowed Lance to move from P13 into like the points at P9, which I thought was quite a unique teammate case there, right? But it's tough because every time Aston Martin brings these quote unquote upgrades to the track, they do worse in performance. And again, like it's come to a point now where at the beginning of last year when they were consistent, when Fernando Alonso was getting consistent podiums with the car, it had the potential and pace. Now it's like, I don't even know we're going to finish P5 in the constructors because Racing Bulls or V-Carb might overtake us come race round 15, round 16 in that case. So and when they're when Lawrence is claiming that he's putting in tons of money into investments and infrastructure, okay, what point do we see now that these upgrades work? Because you're consistently getting downgrades when you're quote unquote thinking they're bringing the upgrades, and that's either an infrastructure issue or a personnel issue. And the infrastructure issue is seemed to be taken care of apparently through investment. He's not the one guy to waste money. So maybe it's a personnel issue at this point, and we really got to sort that out ASAP because we will not be competitive come down the road. If that's
Andrew,
the case.
Andrew, I'm going to be very honest with you and in full transparency. Like when they showed the standings or of the race, like they showed the 11th to the 20th, and my first reaction is I said, "Where's Lance Stroll?" That like I'm going to be very transparent about this. And then I saw P8, like no, sorry, was it P9? Yeah, P9. Sorry, like kind of like a sleeper this weekend. Like I did not like. I think all the focus was on Fernando Alonso crashing in FP1, and then just not having a really. We had to start from the pit lane during on Sunday, so it's like I guess like was Lance Stroll should have been like the driver of the day. Well, actually, yeah, but like because it was just quite right. I didn't even realize it was racing.
I didn't really either. I think it's because for once he must have used his mirrors and brakes and not taken anyone out.
Yeah.
Truthfully, like to talk about a personnel issue at Aston Martin, Lawrence Stroll struggling to make the right call when it comes to who's on his team. I'm not shocked because what we just said, the driver's name of whom we were just saying was a sleeper agent. Because quite frankly, I still have so many questions about why that guy is still in seat. I get it's daddy's little F1 team. I can't even call it my first F1 team anymore because this isn't Lance's first F1 team. But it feels like that's how it should be. And honestly, like we've seen him make questionable things out of a sense, like questionable decisions to keep people around out of a sense of be it loyalty, familiarity, friendliness on that side of things. So I can only imagine with a less consequential position behind the scenes that still has some impact on the performance of the car, there might be some similar conversations that haven't been had that need to be had.
And I'm pretty sure Mike Crack has gone on record stating that the car is being built around kind of like, the idea that Lance Stroll is going to be a long-term driver with the team. And I'm like, why?
Why?
Why would you waste money like that in terms of investment when you have a more experienced driver, Fernando Alonso, who knows what he's talking about? And it shouldn't be based around one person. It should be based around a positive performance for the team. And Lance is P11 in the Drivers' Championship, Fernando P9. But it's like he's a 10th, a P6, and a P9 finish is all he has to show today. Well, Alonso's was in the points at every race except in in Imola, finishing P19. It's the consistency is not there, and you're gonna build a car around a guy who is inconsistent. It's just mind-boggling in terms of question. Because again, it's only daddy's money. This team will not, if this is going to continue to be a trend with Aston Martin, I'll tell you right now, this team will not succeed until Lawrence sells the team.
Yep.
Or sells his majority sharehold in the team to somebody else. Because this is the direction we're going, oh boy, this is going to be very scary.
If you're Fernando and you've just signed on for 2 more years with the team, and this is what you're hearing and what you're seeing and stuff like that, how are you feeling about your decision right now?
Well, maybe he's just got like the money bag eyes.
Okay, he pushed me off the track. I think you have to leave a space. All the time you have to leave a space.
Unfortunately, right? And just kind of seeing is like, but I feel like this is kind of similar for Vettel, right? In his final couple of years with Aston Martin, was more so just a retirement plan than it was, he did help build the car, but by the end of it, you could tell Sebastian was not really into, the team. And I fear that might be the case with Alonso as well, because as I mentioned, Erica, is, where this direction is going. And I'm sorry, you cannot build a team around Lance Stroll.
It's so mid. So mid.
Yeah.
If that.
I want to go win. I've been a winner everywhere I've been. I want to win F1 championships. Your son will not win an F1 championship. I'm so sorry to say this, Lawrence, but your son is not that good. He is mid. He is
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
If you want to sponsor us, our email is f1.podcast@gmail.com. Support your fellow knuckleheads, Lawrence, and we'll stop insulting your son.
Honestly, that's a great way to segue for this. Like, thank you. Like, Lawrence, if you want to sponsor us, we love you. We really do love you. So
You brought Tommy Hilfiger to Canada, and for that I am forever grateful.
We'll take your bags of money.
And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is that in 2020, Lance showed an aspect of potential greatness there. You know what I mean? Like, he had podium finishes, and he's been able to score podium finishes in his career. So like, he's capable of it. It's not there. It's not happening right now. And it's beyond frustrating.
We could talk about the other teams. I just found like overall the atmosphere at Imola was like a lot of fun. Love seeing, I don't know if you saw the tifosi everywhere, and like the shrines that they had for Fred Vasseur, like he's the Pope, and then Leclerc's the chosen one. The list can go on and on. I also did see that Lewis Hamilton did get a like well-received reception by the Ferrari fans. So, I mean, any last comments about the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix?
They need to shorten the official name because it was too long with too many sponsors and weird stuff thrown in there for me to pronounce it properly and in a timely manner. And this weekend showed great promise for the papaya, a bit of opportunity for Red Bull / maybe a little bit of fear. And I'm excited to see what happens in the upcoming weeks, especially once we get away from maybe like the next street circuit and onto Canada.
For me, it's that Williams are in absolute shambles right now.
Shambles.
Yeah, I think they got the Sauber gun nut, and it got like transferred to them when they tried to put Alex Albon's tire on.
Like, coming off the back of, when we talked about last podcast, also F Williams for announcing the extension after we talked about the potential of him not staying.
It was literally 8 hours later. Like, I woke up, what was it? We were recording the episode until
8 p.m.
10
p.m. Yeah.
It was like 10 p.m. and I woke up at 6 a.m. the next day, and it had been announced like 2-3 hours beforehand. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, less than.
But Erica, you know what they say, right? Karma's a bitch, and this was karma this weekend for doing that to us.
I'm really good. I'm really good
podcast.
at getting things wrong with sports. Like, anytime I think a certain team will win, they lose. So I'm like, yeah, he's not gonna stay, and then he extends. So if ever you need help placing your sports bets, lads, just ask me for my take and bet against it. So that's my advice.
Hashtag fade Erica.
Yeah.
But like it had to been just unbelievably frustrating for Alex Albon to like go in the pits. It's a normal pit stop, and the fact that his right tire is not fitted properly onto the car and that it could fall off at any given point, you're already then a lap down then based on the trudging along the track. And then you'll get a 10-second penalty. It's like throwing water on yourself in a pool at that point, right? And then after that, you might as well just retire the car, save the energy, right? Because there is no point in being like 2 laps down during the race. So, and yet the search for the first point of the season continues for Williams. And to think that after last season and what they had going on, this is not what a position you want to be in. So again, a lot of work for James Vowles. I understand the change in the concept car philosophy is very challenging. But my goodness, you need to score some points, my man.
Monaco, where our back cars are bigger still. So it'll be very expensive to put one of our imaginary yachts near the track. So, Erica, sorry, you were gonna say something? My bad.
What?
Oh, I thought you were saying something.
Oh, no, my cat was here and I was just trying to blow on his asshole. Get out.
I do that too sometimes.
I think you need to keep that in. Please don't edit
Yeah.
it. But yeah, ok, ce week-end, nous sommes de retour chez Monaco. Nous sommes de retour? No, nous sommes. That's not proper grammar. Haha, you can tell I haven't done my French in a while. We are going back to Monaco, which is the home circuit of one Charles Leclerc. Also home to a lot of the drivers, as we found out this week through our stats. Like a lot of the F1 drivers, because of
Can you believe they
taxation
don't-
and airports, like
they don't pay income tax, they don't pay property tax, they pay like no tax.
But here's the thing. Of all the people who live in Monaco, most of them, I don't know if they actually work there. Like, you're probably going across the border to France and you're probably paying income tax in France. So it makes sense in that regard.
Yeah, but I wonder for like the rest of the season they get paid. If it's like if it's like a calendar year thing, like the rest of they don't get paid. Or well, I'm sure
Oh,
they
I
have
was
like
meaning-
1,000 tax shelters in the Cayman Islands to figure out that they won't pay tax for the next 20 years anyways.
Yeah,
I was also thinking about your like average Joe and Jane there, not necessarily the F1
true.
drivers themselves.
Well,
Those guys, yeah.
I think there's like 12,000 millionaires there or something like that. I think the stat that we saw. I know Kim Illman did a video on like the tax breakdown for drivers in the countries that their origin, and let's just say those that are there, pretty nice.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Well, speaking of pretty cool, can we not say that McLaren livery for the Senna-inspired livery this weekend is probably the nicest livery I've ever seen on a McLaren car?
I want to change my personality so that that design becomes my personality. I don't know what that would mean.
McLaren is just notorious for putting bangers of liveries out on every Monaco Grand Prix lately. I mean, like,
Well, they got the
had
classic golf one.
and then we went to like the Triple Crown last year.
So nice.
And now this year is the Senna-inspired on his 30, it's in honor of Senna's passing from 30 years ago. Right? Just imagine if Lando or Oscar could pull it off this weekend in that car.
Don't get me excited, Clary. Don't get me excited. I will say, I am hoping that we're still seeing promise out of the Ferraris. I truly would forego a win on the McLaren side if it were Charles Leclerc who were able to take home a win. Me saying that right now means it's not going to happen.
I really hope so. I'm just gonna shut up over here.
Do you want to hear Charles Leclerc's history at Monaco?
Oh, fuck.
Since
Please,
2017?
please, yes.
So since his F2 debut in 2017, he DNF'd in the feature race due to suspension failure from pole position. See, Ricci's already at it. He doesn't even want to listen to this.
He walked away.
But guess
and
what? He's
took
going to
his
listen to this on the
headphones
edit anyways. 2017 sprint race, DNF due to a concussion. 2018 F1, DNF due to brake failure, and he completely got hammered in by, I think it was like Brendan Hartley at the time. 2019 F1 quali, P16 because he botched Q1 strategy. In the race, DNF due to a concussion. Didn't race there in 2020. 2021 F1 did not start from pole position because he screwed up his gearbox on his final qualification lap. 2022 was infamous P4 finish because he botched the strategy from pole, or Xavi did. And then last year, 2023 qualified P3 but got demoted to P6 after a grid penalty and did not make up any point positions from there. So he's had a tumultuous record at
I
Monaco.
I just looked over at Richie's face and it was that of someone who is just glazed out. Like they're just so dissociated from the conversation.
Yeah,
But
I'm
you
so,
gotta think at some point his luck's gonna change,
we've
right?
been
You
saying that for the
can't go
Toronto
through
Maple
this.
Leafs since 1967. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it's, but anyways, yeah. Okay, he's in good form right now. That's what, good voodoo, good voodoo. Love him, love him, love him. Andiamo, like, get it done. Just please. That's,
Andiamo, fratello.
I have a question for you, for you both, actually. Do you think this is actually a pivotal weekend for Sainz in terms of his F1 future?
Ooh, interesting.
no, I think he's already he's proven himself. Yes, I think this past weekend he is. I think I'm going to be honest. I think the options are starting to narrow down as more drivers going to get picked, and I think honestly, it's the Audi's seat to lose. Mind you, I think last week in Italy, or at Imola, it was tough with just the circumstance and the qualifying, and I think the gap that he was trying to go with Oscar and Lando, it just didn't really work out. Mind you, like, yes, should he do well this weekend? For sure. And especially we've seen how qualifying at Monaco is really determined on your final position on Sunday for the most part. So he's just got to have a good qualifying, and I think it's possible. But I think his future is already determined. He's proven that. He's a great driver. If Red Bull is serious, because I think I've heard that Red Bull's who's Helmut Marko met with Carlos Sainz Sr. during the weekend. I think it was Sky News Sports that reported that. Take that with a grain of salt. But like, yeah, I think he's already proven himself. But yeah,
I really think his choices are narrowed down to 3 teams. I think it's Red Bull, who I feel will go back to Checo. There. It's Mercedes, but I don't think they're going to sign a big deal with Mercedes. It's going to be kind of the same length as George Russell's will be to kind of give them options down the road. And then it's Audi. And truthfully, based on the way Sauber's been kicking around the can this year, I would not want to go to Sauber/Audi at all.
No chance.
Right?
Not even a little.
So he really needs to do well this weekend and kind of secure that Mercedes seat, in my opinion, to maintain competitiveness in F1, because we saw what happened with Valtteri Bottas going from a very competitive team in Mercedes to pretty much out of Q1 in every race with kick, crap, steak, dumb, Sauber, whatever.
Hey, he held on for a couple more races when he first joined Alpha to keep that Q3 streak going. And then, I don't even know if you can say it fell off a cliff. I think it sunk to the bottom of the Marianas Trench and just crumpled under the weight of the pressure of the water at that point.
I mean,
But-
like the modern day Titanic in F1 at this point.
Cataclysmic what's been going on over there. It kind of makes me think, like, remember how we had, what was the Italian guy's name? Why am I suddenly blanking?
Antonio Giovinazzi.
Giovinazzi.
Yeah.
Giovinazzi?
Giovinazzi, yeah.
Giovinazzi. Even that doesn't feel right. Italian Jesus was on the team, and it was one of those things where I kept looking at him and thinking it was a him problem, but maybe it was just a symptom of a much deeper rooted problem. I'm hopeful that maybe with the injection of Audi and some stuff, we see renewed life. Right now, if you're Carlos Sainz, you're looking around and you're like, all of these options are bad.
I guess in a way I do say, I think, as Andreas Seidel, he had in a recent interview that was speaking to the public for the first time since his kind of move to be like Audi CEO. And it sounds like there's some good infrastructure being built. But right now, from what I hear, is they need to add at least 300 people to their overall team personnel in order to kind of get competitive in F1. And when you hear that, it might not be hard, but that's a lot of people you got to hire. 300 people in a matter of about a year and a half.
That is so many people. Oh my gosh. And like trying to get them from the right places to have enough knowledge to come in and not build from like literally ground zero on that one. Oh, not a task I envy. Not a task I envy at all.
So, and that's why, like, for Carlos, I don't think that's a good fit for him. And I really feel that he needs to push to get that Mercedes seat, take the deal whatsoever for the next 2 years, and then sort his situation out from there.
Max Verstappen has had some absolute banger takes
This is another
off the
quote of the
track
year
this
candidate.
year.
It's another quote of the year candidate.
He is just, I like, someone else has got to read. I just love it. I love the guy. Like, one of those things where he's matured a little bit in the last couple of years, and he's now one of my favorite people. Like, he's kind of how I feel about Lewis Hamilton. Top of the game, you want to hate him, you hope he's cocky and mean and terrible, but he's speaking the truth and he's saying some good stuff.
So I don't know what the interview was, but he basically called out Liberty Media F1's overall quote unquote sustainability policies in relation to the current calendar. Because he mentioned that, with the travel that they do right now, he's mentioned there's a lot of travel left in the season. And when they talk about net zero policy by 2030, you see it gets shoved down your throat at the beginning of every race, right? Now, in terms of sustainability, going to new fuel, you hear about it all the time. But he had the quote of the year, another quote of the year candidate here, where he basically literally calls out Liberty Media and asks them, what are you trying to sell? Is it tickets or is it the sustainability story? Which I love when people at the top of the game literally call out their quote unquote employers, right? To be better. And they gotta be better because this calendar sucks again.
It really does, man.
I mean, like, kudos to him. So let's talk about quotable and hot but right and correct takes from Max Verstappen. There was the whole F1 Academy thing, like, yeah, this is great, but like, if we're not getting women into the cars and like getting them on par with the rest of us, like, what is the point of this? What are we doing? Which, correct. And not saying to get rid of it, but saying like we should be investing in avenues for them to get on the same level footing earlier on. Correct take. We've got this year, which is, do you want to sell tickets or are you trying to sell a sustainability story and calling them out for greenwashing of their policies and practices, which, love it. I also wonder if he's going to get fined or come under fire because drivers are supposed to stop doing all that political chit chat and stuff like that. I don't know, but I also think he's got so much money he doesn't care.
It's just, unfortunately, he is going to have to spend less money on FIFA points for the month. But I agree. You know what, Erica? I completely agree. It's like the calendar has no flow in terms of travel distance. They had a great idea. Let's start out in Asia, but then we go to like Miami.
Yeah.
And now we're jumping to like Italy, Monaco, and then at some points we cut, we do our little European
Canada.
tour. Yeah, Canada, and then we end up going back to like Qatar and then back to Brazil. Like it is just an absolute nightmare. And he made a great point. Why don't we start west or start in like Asia and make our way west? And the issue is that like they always have to have Abu Dhabi and Qatar as like the final two races of the year just based on temperature wise. We almost kind of wonder if we can rebuild, like in a perfect world, you rebuild or you take out Qatar and maybe Abu Dhabi as a whole, or one of those two races. You build it in with the current Asian week. So you imagine having like, it'd be kind of cool as a fan. Like if you want to do like a 4 or 5 week trip to Asia, in theory, you could jump to these different countries and watch races as you go along, right? Because it's all geared toward that. I think it would be best too. It might be easier to bring family of like all the personnel over as part of a vacation, right? Because you're going to be staying in the same spot for at least a couple weeks. Throw some back-to-backs in there as well. And then, why don't we end the season in Brazil as it was meant to be? Because Brazil's a bang, like Interlagos has been producing some bangers lately.
Such a good track.
And that would be a fantastic, imagine like a title decider again at Interlagos. Oh my God. Like,
what was the last one?
Ending on a high.
Hamilton
right,
and Felipe Massi? Was that the last big one there?
Yeah, I think 08, right? Or even like, no, like Sebastian Vettel, I think in like 2012 when he got clipped at the start and then had to make his way back through the field in order to finish ahead of Fernando Alonso, who was in the Ferrari. Like, and in these past few years, like Interlagos has created some amazing sprint and why not make the final weekend a sprint weekend, right? As much as we hate the format, it would be unreal because there's just more points up for grabs, more variables towards the end, right? And that's what Liberty Media wants, right? The Money Cali loves these ideas. So why don't we kind of marry the ideas where, yes, like you can kind of keep if you want to keep the tracks on the calendar, fine, but there's got to be some flow in the calendar to help, with transition for these guys, because it is a ton of travel and a ton of CO2 emissions going around in that case.
And even if they want to add more races to the track, like they would have to do something like that. There's really not much of a way to squeeze more cross-Atlantic, cross-Pacific, whatever kind of travel in there, unless you're going with a more region by region type of model. And also, I'm curious if they're all worried about ticket sales, how many people are really buying like tickets multiple times over? And also, wouldn't they just continue to do that because they're probably the same people who are already doing it now?
And if they want to keep adding races to the calendar, by all means, good luck trying. If already teams have like 200 something days already on the road or for the season, so
No, but correct me wrong, wouldn't Montreal make more sense to do in like August
Oh
than
my
in
gosh,
like
it's
June?
so
I think
hot.
it's just so I think the rationale, I think the rationale for Montreal, I think from a local perspective, why its placement on the calendar is like, I guess for when Eric and I went to Montreal, a lot of people said that the Formula One weekend is like the weekend to kick off Montreal's summer. So like, but yeah, again, things if they want to be more sustainable, they need to change it around, and I'm like totally fine with that. And it'll probably be really hot in Montreal in the summer, but hey, you get all types of weather when you go to the
Throw it
Montreal
in
Canadian Grand
September.
Prix.
It's already hot there now. I was talking to one of my coworkers and it's like 35 degrees and humid in Montreal right now. So I don't really think it matters. But Liberty Media, mix it up, keep it fresh, keep some consistency in your GD messaging. Because Max Verstappen has had enough of it. And what the Flying Dutchman says goes. Ba ba ba.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the F1 podcast. As an Italian, we say grazie mille. Thank you so much, Erica and Andrew. I'm so excited to see you guys shortly. And also, we got Monaco this weekend. Then we got the Canadian Grand Prix in less than, I think, 3 weeks. Really excited about that. So tune into next week's episode of the F1 podcast. And reminder, we are 13 away from 1,000 followers on Instagram. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Threads, TikTok, Twitch, and yeah, I think I've got all of them there. But anyways, grazie mille and buonanotte.
Buonanotte.